Tapes of Trepidation presents the Campfire Sessions. Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to the Campfire Sessions, here on Tapes of Trepidation. I'm so happy you've come back to join me by the campfire as more creepy stories are shared. It's an unnaturally dark night. Rather ominous, some might say. When the night rolls in with such darkness, it can be quite scary. For you never truly know what waits in the dark. This evening, we're delving into 3 stories that explore this line of thought, starting with a strange story about one man's encounter with a creature his uncle told him about one night. It appears what he originally thought was a tall tale was in fact true, as he shares the story and why they know I'm here. It all started one night when my uncle first told me he'd seen a Sasquatch. I didn't believe him, but something about the way he told the story just captured my imagination. I thought maybe he'd been mistaken in what he'd seen, but I know now I shouldn't have doubted him. There's a vast forest just beyond my backyard that stretches all the way back to a cliff face. Within those woods, you can find abandoned mines, streams, and even old, run-down wooden cabins. This was the playground of my early youth, and the inspiration for my many camping ventures. One fall night, my Uncle Peter came over to visit. He and my dad and I had spent the night beneath the stars around a campfire in the backyard. My dad had cut some old pine wood and stacked the logs in a perfect circle. The fire rose up to illuminate the backyard, and the monochrome cloud pierced the star-studded sky. "You know what they use pine wood for, right, boy?" said Uncle Peter, sitting down at the campfire. I shook my head. "Coffins. A pine wood box 6 feet down," he said with a snarky grin. He laughed as he threw another log onto the fire. Uncle Peter was an odd fellow, but trustworthy and reliable. He'd come to my rescue many times before, driving out to fix my vehicle in the freezing snow when it had broken down on the side of the road, and always offering his country wisdom. A peculiar sound cut through the night. It sounded like a woman screaming. "What the heck was that?" I said in a panic, scanning the darkness. It's nothing, just an old screech owl. Nothing to worry about. I've seen and heard things out in those woods that would really scare you. Beetles the size of your fist, and wandering hungry coyotes that certainly weren't afraid of humans," said Uncle Pete. For some reason, this didn't calm my nerves. My uncle then looked at me with a dead serious expression on his face and said, "You want to know about the weirdest thing I've ever run into out there?" My dad and I knew that he was about to tell us anyway, so we both agreed. "Well, it was out in the national forest just north here. I was out after dark collecting firewood and I started hearing these odd knocking sounds, as if someone was hitting a stick against a tree trunk. Then I heard an extremely loud noise that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was an animal I had never heard before. The sound was a deep whooping call like that of a very large ape. The next thing I knew, I saw two sets of orange glowing eyes in the dark. I shined my flashlight on it, only to see an 8-foot-tall, upright standing creature. Like a man but covered in thick, dark brown hair. It let out another one of those whooping cries, and I booked it out of there immediately. I never ran so fast in my life. Never seen anything like it, and I hope I never have to again. My dad and I were completely silent as Uncle Pete told us his story. Afterwards, we were visibly tense. And we didn't spend much longer at the campfire before heading back inside. My uncle only laughed at our fear. See? Not so worried about that screech owl now, huh? I wasn't entirely convinced by my uncle's story. I wonder if he had just made it up to scare us. I mean, that's what a campfire story is, right? I thought maybe he'd just seen an odd bear, scared by the dark and mistaken it for something more. Surely even an outdoorsman can be mistaken, I thought. It seemed more likely than the idea there were ape creatures somehow living out in the forests. I couldn't believe it. I had to know for myself. So in the weeks that followed my uncle's visit, I got the bright idea to head out into the nearby national forest where he supposedly saw the creature. What a mistake that was. I set out on my adventure in my dad's old mud-covered pickup, with only a camera hanging from my neck to document whatever I saw. A canopy of trees stood above me in colorful autumn varieties, and a bizarre feeling walked alongside me as I wandered along the path. It was evening time, and my surroundings were beginning to turn a blue tint. I walked through the forest with great uneasiness. 1,000 eyes were watching me. The wind drifted through the environment and across the leaf-quilted forest floor. Suddenly, a knocking sound. It was hollow, an unmistakable tap on the side of a far-off tree trunk. I took a step forward. Again, a distinct knock, wooden in tone. What followed was a loud guttural whooping sound that sent shivers down my spine. It was just as my uncle described. Then, like he did, I ran right out of there. I bolted for the truck without even thinking to lift my camera. Though I didn't see what made the sounds, I knew at this point there was something out there. Something not quite man, but not quite beast. I couldn't prove it, but at least I knew the truth for myself. All the way home, as I drove, I had the unsettling feeling that I was being watched. My eyes glazed worriedly at the trees on the other side of the road. I couldn't shake the feeling until I pulled into my driveway. I went to bed that night without bothering to share the experience with my dad. Hours later, I awoke to a sound in the backyard. I grabbed my flashlight and walked out onto the back porch. To my utter horror, I saw a pair of glowing, orange eyes at the edge of the woods. I hovered my flashlight over the glowing eyes to reveal a large, hairy creature standing eerily still between the trees and looking right at me with an almost human expression. The ape creature looked just as bewildered as I did at seeing him. He studied me curiously from across the backyard, as if amazed by my existence. 4 other sets of colorful eyes, in green, red, and yellow, then suddenly blinked to life in the darkness. He was not alone. The group of Sasquatch simply stared at me for a moment before unleashing an ungodly sound. I quickly went inside and bolted the door shut. The eyes eventually faded, disappearing into the woods behind my house. I didn't get any sleep that night. I just sat up in bed, staring out the window, waiting for their return. Yesterday, I found a set of massive footprints in my backyard. They were bigger than any person could make. Large barefoot impressions pressed deeply into the mud. There's no question in my mind, no debate, no ambiguity. There are bizarre ape-like creatures living in the woods. My uncle and I have seen them, and countless others have as well. I'm not saying I believe all the stories of Sasquatch, but there are those who have actually witnessed these creatures. These folks know what I'm talking about. Keep in mind, if you haven't seen them, you just might one day. These are not just scary stories. These are not just campfire tales. They are out there. I've seen them. But worse yet, they've seen me. They followed me through the forest, shadowed me from behind the trees, and have come back with me to my home to live. I now know what it's like to be an undiscovered animal spotted for the first time. I know what it's like to be studied from a distance. There's nothing I can do. They know where I am. I can't hide. They know I'm here now. Scary story narrator Noetic joins us by the campfire to share a terrifying story of a young woman's journey into the darkness. While trying to escape her home life, she finds something that may be even worse, as now it comes to her.
The woods behind Mary Jane's house did not make her feel safe. They were thick with old twisted trees, whose branches scratched her like bony fingers. The crescent moon overhead did not provide much light for her to see, so as she ran, she couldn't avoid the harsh brush or sharp rocks jutting from the ground. Her bare feet caught onto something, maybe a root or a stone, sending her tumbling to the ground. She lay there on the cold grass for a moment, too scared and weak to pull herself up. Sweat made the cuts from the branches and thorns sting, adding to the pain of old and new bruises on her body. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her head up and looked around. Her eyes strained to see through the dense fog, but she appeared to be in a clearing. Pain shot up her arms and back as she got to her feet and brushed the dirt off her thin cotton dress. What sounded like a bird cried out as it leapt from one branch to another. Mary Jane jumped at the sound, turning on her heels and praying to see something. Anything. She could just find a squirrel or an owl, something to indicate the forest's innocence. Maybe her heart would stop pounding. There was nothing. She sighed, wiped the sweat from her brow and the tears from her cheeks. The woods were not safe, but the eerie emptiness was definitely better than bearing the brunt of her father's drunken wrath back home. She could stay here for a while, wait until he was surely asleep, then make her way back to the house. Leaves rustled in the wind, sending shivers up her spine. She swallowed and licked her lips. quietly telling herself that she was alone. Mary Jane repeated in her mind like a mantra, "I am alone. I am alone. I am." A glint of light flashed beyond the trees. More leaves rustled. Twigs snapped. Anxiety crept into Mary Jane's chest. Her heart felt as if it shriveled like a raisin. She shivered and folded her arms closely to her chest for warmth. That yellow glimmer appeared again. 2 dots somewhere in the distance. Mary Jane forced herself to look down at her feet and continued her mantra, "I am alone. I am alone." She closed her eyes and rocked back and forth on her heels to the rhythm of the words in her head. "I am alone. I am alone." She ignored the sounds of the twigs and leaves, even as they grew louder. "I am alone." A pant of warm, humid breath fell on her forehead. Mary Jane ran, bolting back into the direction of her isolated mountain house. Anxious, terrified nausea filled her stomach, contorting her insides as she ran. Tears in her eyes obscured her sight even further. Darkness seemed like it could envelop her completely. She couldn't escape. She wasn't alone. She wasn't going to make it. Mary Jane stopped under the light of her back porch. She could hear nothing but static from the old TV inside, along with her father's faint snores. With a sigh of relief, she climbed up the porch stairs to the screen door. The steps creaked under her feet. Resting her head against the screen door, she wondered where she would go now that the woods were no longer the lesser of 2 evils. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the door open and stepped inside. As she quietly closed the door as to not wake her father, Mary Jane saw those yellow eyes in the darkness just beyond the trees. She froze, the hair on her neck standing on end. In the next room, her father coughed and grumbled in his sleep. She flinched at the sound, instinctively closing her eyes and holding up her hands in defense. When no blow came, she relaxed just enough to look out into the darkness once more. Whatever was out there was still staring at her, perhaps even into her. Her heart pounding, Mary Jane took a step away from the door. Her hand lingered on the latch for a moment. Then she pulled away, leaving it hanging. If there was nowhere to go, then it could come to her.
Our final tale this evening is a story that could happen to any one of us, really. For we all have strange dreams we think aren't real. Just be sure to keep an eye out if you ever notice a hole in the wall. You sit in your room, staring at the computer screen intently. You shift into a more comfortable position and resume scrolling through the web. You hear a scratch. You look up at the softball-sized hole in your wall. Someone must be using the water in the adjacent apartment. You watch the hole for a moment before blinking and returning to your computer. After a few moments, you hear the scratching sound again. This time, slightly louder and in a different part of the wall. You begin to feel uncomfortable. The sounds have never come from more than one spot before. The sound comes again, just behind the computer. You stand up and tap the wall lightly where the scratching was coming from. It happens again, this time much louder. You hear a clank, and the sound moves again. It's closer to the hole in your wall. You aren't sure why it's there, but you've never questioned it before now. You assume that it's a rat, so you find an old trap, set it up behind the computer, and go to sleep. When you wake up, the trap has been sprung, but you haven't caught anything. You reset the trap and leave for work. A few hours later, you return home and find the trap, once again, sprung but empty. You set it once again, sure that you'll catch it this time. After all, third time's a charm, right? You stare at the hole in the wall, daring the rat to come out and get caught. After a moment, you decide that you need to leave the room, so you go to clean the main room. While you clean, the scratching sound follows you around the apartment. It grows more and more insistent as time passes. You grab your phone and play music to drown out the sound. When the apartment is as clean as it can possibly be, you return to the room, putting your phone on the counter as you go. The moment that you take out the headphones, you notice something. The silence. The deep, resounding silence. You stop just outside of your room, feeling a sudden dread. You feel that if you go into that room, there will be something dreadful in there. Terribly dreadful. You stand there for several moments, convincing yourself that there isn't anything in the room. You take a deep breath and open the door slowly. You see the pillows first, which, considering that they're everywhere, isn't very surprising. They are torn apart and strewn around the room. You stare at the polyester feathers that cover the floor. You check the trap and aren't quite sure what to think. It caught something, but it isn't an animal. It's a picture of you. You pull it out and put the trap away. Where did the picture come from? You don't even have any pictures of yourself, except... You check your wallet. Sure enough, the picture in your wallet is missing. You are starting to get thoroughly freaked out. What with the torn up pillows and the stolen picture? You spend an hour cleaning the feathers from the floor and the bed. You stay awake in the corner of your room, facing the hole in the wall with a cleaver. Sometime in the night, you migrate back to your bed and grudgingly fall asleep. You have a dream that you've been having often recently. You're sleeping in your bed like normal, but there's a cat-sized creature watching you from the foot of your bed. It has a scaly tail and uneven matted fur. Its eyes are huge and round, glowing red. You see its teeth glint in the night, long and sharp. It just stares at you for hours on end, and you stare back. After hours of this, the creature stands on its 4 squat legs and leaves the bed. It climbs up the wall and turns its head to stare at you one last time before it disappears into the hole. You stare at the hole before turning onto your side and falling back asleep in the dream. When you wake up, you sit up and freeze. There, at the foot of your bed, is the creature from your dream. Well, you guess that they aren't dreams after all. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for the 4th edition of the Campfire Sessions here on Tapes of Trepidation. I hope you had as much fun as I did sitting around the campfire while these stories were shared. The stories featured on this edition were They Know I'm Here Now, written by never you mind who, and it was originally posted on the Creepypasta Wiki. Come to Her was written by Chambergambit and was originally posted on the Creepypasta Wiki. Guest narration and dialogue editing was by Noetic. If you're not familiar with Noetic's work, go check it out. She's a fantastic narrator, and there's a lot of spooky stories, quite a bit based in reality. So go check her out. Hole in the Wall was written by Curran RKO 98. I am so sorry if I'm butchering that. And was originally posted on the Creepypasta Wiki. The Tapes of Trepidation theme and the wonderful acoustic version you're currently hearing was written and performed by JM Scherf. If you need any custom music or stock music, JM is the man and is awesome to work with. You'll find a link to all his content in the show notes. All logos, banners, overlays, including the brand new Campfire Sessions overlay, were done by the incredible Jason Rees from Jaybird Digital Arts. If you need any graphic design work done, Jason is your guy. I've known him for years. He's one of my favorite people, and he's a blast to work with. You'll find a link to contact him in the show notes. If you enjoyed what you heard, consider subscribing, leaving a rating, and following Tapes of Trepidation on social media. You can find a link tree in the show notes. And if for some reason this is your first time listening to the podcast with the Campfire Sessions, be sure to check out the other episodes in the archives. We usually do things a little differently. A little bit of extra sound design, some music, lots of really, really fun, fascinating stories. So I hope you'll consider checking some more episodes out. And if you feel like supporting the show a little more, consider joining the Tapes of Trepidation Patreon. With as little as $5 a month, you can gain access to monthly bonus short story narrations, the weekly behind-the-scenes podcast within the archive, a weekly shout-out, and more at higher tiers. So come, join us, and become trapped within the archive. Just like my current patrons, Doozer Pindan, Ronan Komori, Eric Phones, Patrick Stewart, Madam Strangeways, Dr. Torment, Tori, and Queen Cam. Thank you all so much for the support. It truly means the world to me. All content used on Tapes of Trepidation is either original, used with permission, or is available on your Creative Commons by Share-alike license. All rights reserved unless otherwise stated. Licensing information can be found in the show notes. Now, I think it's best if you head out for the night, as the fire is starting to die out. And as we've learned this evening, you never know what may be lurking nearby in the dark. Hope to see you next time.